Okay, which one of you guys has been apologizing to the writers and directors of Dragon Age Veilguard? Because according to a recent article by the Chads over at The Gamer, this is apparently what's been going on. I couldn't believe my eyes at that headline, so instead of ignoring it, which is what I do to 99% of the crap that they write, I clicked on it. And apparently this is coming off the back of that big Bloomberg article by Jason Schreier named Inside the Dragon Age Debacle that gutted EA's Bioware studio. If you're not aware, it's a sort of a deep dive article by Jason Schreier on the failure of Dragon Age Veilguard. I skimmed through the article and I didn't really pay much mind to it initially because Jason Schreier has stopped being a reliable source a long time ago, especially in situations like these, but we'll get to that in a bit. Apparently, after that article dropped, some people in the Dragon Age subreddit have been making posts apologizing to Bioware, especially the writers and directors, because that article claims that EA is the cause of the failure. Or at least that's their interpretation, even though nobody really mentions failure at all in either this article or Jason Schreier's, which is in and of itself a red flag, at least in my view. This was after all a failure, and even EA themselves used the word to describe it earlier this year. But whatever, maybe I'm being too petty in this regard, so let's just move on. According to The Gamer, DJ Reyes kicked things off, apologizing to some of those who worked on the Veilguard, and many fans agree and echo similar sentiments. I got a question. What fans exactly? People from the subreddit? What would they have to apologize for? They like the game so much that they're in the goddamn subreddit. They've been praising the game since the beginning. It's so bad that you can actually get banned from that subreddit for expressing criticism. So what is this? Just a couple of people who are like, I actually love the game, but if only it was just a little bit better. I'm not sure that's going to be much worth to the writers that got fired and the directors of the game, but yeah, more power to you, I suppose. Let's get to the article. I have been critical of the Veilguard and its tone, writing and lack of continuity ever since it released, says DJ Reyes SA 9095. I tended to put the blame on the Trinity: John Epler, creative director, Corinne Bush, game director, and lead writer Trick Weeks, for the game's tone and writing, and thus its failure. I assume that nobody cares about my thoughts, yet I want to acknowledge that me constantly blaming the Trinity pushed the idea that they were either the sole reason or the major reason for the game's failure and the death of the franchise. But now I can safely assume that they tried their best with a bad deck of cards. Oh boy, here we go again. They absolutely are a major factor for the game's failure. If you have problems with the writing and the directing in a game, if both of these elements are failures, then that's on the writers and the directors. What do you mean? You can't just blame EA for this. EA didn't come over and write the game. EA wasn't the one making decisions on where to take the story or whether or not to burn the bridge of continuity. The major issue that this guy is referring to here when it comes to EA is that EA wanted Dragon Age Veilguard, or rather the Dragon Age sequel at the time, to be a live service video game. So they shifted the focus from single player to multiplayer once, and then they shifted it back from multiplayer to single player. That's the quick context for you guys. But honestly, it doesn't even look like EA rushed them here, which is sadly such a huge problem in so many instances where this happens, and then the developers just don't have enough time to make the game that they want to make. But there's no signs that this happened with the Veilguard. There's no signs that Veilguard is not the game that this team envisioned and proudly put together. EA screwed up in one major way. Initially, they wanted to take this game down the live service route because they wanted everything to be a live service. I remember this day like it was yesterday, even though it was ages ago now, when this was first broken as news, and I immediately scratched Dragon Age off my mind. I was so done with live services back then, so many games being announced as live service, sequels being announced as live service, even the big things like Fallout. You want a new Fallout game? Well, screw you, here's Fallout 76. And now remember EA coming out and saying, single player is dead, despite bangers like God of War, Spider-Man, and Red Dead Redemption 2 releasing in one single year, 2018, and all of them selling like hotcakes and dominating social media discourse. There's no doubt at all about the fact that EA is a scummy, greed-fueled company and that their interjections have screwed up games before. before, and even been the reason why some studios have never recovered, like Visceral. They made Dead Space 1, it was a banger, EA took note and wanted to mainstream it. The sequel did well, but then for the third game EA wanted even more. They wanted co-op, they wanted online passes, they wanted microtransactions, and even more reach. That story did not end well and ended up underselling, and then not too long after that they take Visceral and get them making a Battlefield game of which they had no experience in the genre whatsoever, Battlefield Hardline, in which the story mode you played as detectives. I don't know if you guys remember.
Next time on Hotline. Good evening, detective.
You probably have questions.
I have a fuck ton of questions.
I think they did this because DICE was busy making Battlefront and they didn't want to skip a Battlefield game, but who knows. Either way, this didn't do well. And then shortly after, while Visceral was hard at work on a Star Wars single-player game alongside Amy Hennig, which was something people were calling an Uncharted Star Wars game, EA cancelled the project and shut down the studio. If Visceral had been left alone, maybe they would still be around right now, okay? Screw EA. However, we can't just blame publishers for everything and act like the people making the games are all innocent master craftsmen and craftswomen who were handed a bad deck of cards. Dragon Age Veilguard was in development for nearly 10 years. It started in 2015. Now, of course, again, it went through those ridiculous changes where EA was like, okay boys, let's go live service, it's the future. But it's not like they popped up one day and went, okay, chop chop, we gotta get this done now, make it single player as soon as possible, and just get it out right now. I just don't believe this narrative at all. There's no evidence to support it. Hell, the game was in even good condition at release. It was in good shape. Like, there were all kinds of problems everywhere else, but when it came to stability, performance, bugs, there were no issues here. And this is usually a big problem these days. Every other release comes out with problems that need to be patched out. So I'm not buying it at all. This is the game they wanted to make, this is the direction they wanted to take it to, and I have evidence of that. The terrible writing and all the decisions to scrap player choices from previous games and kinda reboot this world was what this team produced. First of all, how are you even going to blame these writing and direction issues on those blunders with making it multiplayer and then shifting back to single player? The game could be a fucking Mario Kart racing game, the story is still something completely separate. Reportedly, Veilguard is a result of around 4 years of fully focused development out of the 10. And the funny thing is that I remember the article detailing the problems of Mass Effect Andromeda and its troubled development, and in the end, the result we got was around 18 months of development, so 1 year and a half, which back then was something that made Andromeda look like a miracle that it even managed to release in the first place. And with 18 months of development, that is still a way better game than Veilguard. I would gladly go and replay it right now. As a huge sci-fi nerd, I do have a bias towards it, which allows me to forgive many of its blunders, but in general, Andromeda is just a much better game than Veilguard, hands down. It released far more broken, absolutely, and by the way, that's what a game that gets rushed out the door looks like. It looks goofy as hell in so many cutscenes, absolutely, but man, I was never assaulted with cringe with its scenes.
Well, I'm non-binary.
There were at least some characters that I actually did like Trak, Liam and Jal. The combat was way more engaging and allowed for more variety than Veilguard's system. The side quests may have mostly been just as forgettable, but the gameplay loop was more engaging than running around in the linear areas of Veilguard, and the loyalty missions were at least better than what we got in Veilguard 2. Like, I can't even remember them in Veilguard. The ones that I do remember are because of how bad they were, like Tasha's journey trying to figure out her pronouns. And I also felt like I had a way bigger impact on the world around me as the Pathfinder than I ever did as whatever the fuck we were in Veilguard. I know a lot of this is playing the devil's advocate, I understand that, but genuinely, this was just a better game than Veilguard. But even if you don't think so, let's just get back to the topic. I just want to know, what's the excuse here? Why are we coping? Why are we blaming EA for their live service push when these people are the ones who failed to produce anything of worth with 4 years of development? With over 100 developers in the studio and God knows how many millions of dollars, when an indie studio just managed to eclipse them in 5 years with a fraction of the workforce and budget. Of course, I'm talking about Clair Obscur Expedition 33. I'm sorry man, I don't want to be a jackass here, but the copium for this game just doesn't stop. Just a few weeks ago, we had articles covering an interview with an actress who blamed the goddamn failure of the game on us, the gamers. Now we've got articles blaming the failure of the game on EA because, oh, years ago they wanted to shift the genre of the game into a live service, and then they had to shift it back to single player, and then they gave them the time and resources that they needed to make the game that they wanted to completion? Huh? I literally have articles that I'm about to show you guys in the next section showing all of this. Decisions that they've made that they wanted to make themselves, even the combat, for example, because they could be like, no, you see, the thing is, we were going to make an epic RPG, okay? But then EA came in and they were like, no, 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 we're going to make a live service. And then we had, you know, the live service thing getting built, and then they were like, okay, no, let's shift it back to single player, okay? But they didn't give us enough time, and so we had to use what we had, and so the game is not an epic RPG because the elements that we had were too basic and we didn't have the time to make it more complex, and so that's the result. Like, no, I got fucking articles and quotes showing that this is what they wanted to make. So when are we going to stop the copium? It's time to stop. And that's just now too, by the way, because just a few months ago they weren't even addressing this as a failure. They were saying that this game was amazing. Hell, the very guy who wrote the Bloomberg article, Jason Schreier, was doing that crap at launch with this infamous tweet that he had since deleted, but to no avail because it's the internet. Go woke, go top the charts?
Base?
So let's get to the fun part, which is all of these receipts that they just want us to forget about, all of these interviews that they gave before and just after launch talking about the game. Like in this IGN interview here, for example, with John Epler and Corinne Bush. It's a huge deep dive from December with a lot of things discussed, including spoilers. Lots of lore and story talk with both of these directors emphasizing that this game aimed to play to Bioware's strengths, with a focus on story and RPG elements. Corinne Bush highlighted how companion-focused the game was, and that her team crafted a game centered on deep and compelling characters. If I'm not mistaken, this is something that had already come up before launch during the whole name change issue from Dreadwolf to Veilguard, shifting the focus from Solus to this new crew who was supposed to stay here for a few more sequels. Whoops! There's no moping about EA in these interviews, there's no whinging about not being able to make the game that they wanted to make, much the contrary, they're glazing themselves and having a great time. So which is it? Also worth noting that the idiotic choice to shift the focus from Solus to this new crew of cringe is theirs. EA didn't pop up at the studio making this demand. Their quote-unquote fans, alongside a biased report from Jason Schreier that fails to account for important issues in the game, need to reassess themselves. EA doesn't have anything to do with the direction or tone. Then there's also this interview with John Epler before the game came out, where he's just excitedly talking about all of the companions and their writing process for them, especially for Bellara, which he worked on personally. Here's a line from it. It was always exciting to come out with a new game. I was on Inquisition, I was on Dragon Age 2, with Origins I came in at the end, I wasn't there until it shipped, so it was a little different. It's always exciting though. The biggest thing about the Veilguard is that there's a lot of stuff in this game. Decisions we made, new characters we created. This is also the first one I did writing for. I wrote one of the companions. Honestly, funny enough, I know I'm the creative director, but the thing I'm most stressed about is the writing side of things. Like, if people don't like the writing or the characters that I created, there's something deeply personal about that. Let's reiterate. Decisions we made. New characters we created. Do you hear any moping about EA? Do you see anyone else being named? Do you see a reference to, I don't know, fucking Santa Claus or something? Guys, Santa Claus came into the studio, handed us a list of shitty characters and decisions, and just told us to put it in the game. I didn't have a choice. What was I gonna do? Say no to Santa? These people created these characters, these people made these decisions, and they were happy as could be about them even after launch. I don't like EA as much as the next guy, but it's time to stop. it's time to let go. This is sadly the best that they could do, as detailed in yet another article from August last year, this time mentioning once again how Anthem taught them a hard lesson. Live service pew pew games weren't what Bioware were good at, but now they were returning to what they're good at, to their roots. We're a studio that has always been built around digging deep on storytelling and role-playing, Epler explained. Epler said that many of the Bioware team joined because they specialize in solo adventures, and as a result they weren't able to deliver their best with Anthem. For me and for the team, the biggest lesson was to know what you're good at and then double down on it. A lot of people on this team came here to build a story-focused, single-player RPG. Dragon Age Veilguard is due for release later this year. Now that right there is cinema. And remember how many of these outlets praised it with that return to form nonsense that they repeated? So which is it? Did they do a fantastic job? Is this a return to form, the best of Bioware? Or is this some terribly cursed video game that EA set up to fail and gave them no chance whatsoever of making into a success? It can't be both. Either the game is fucked because EA didn't allow Bioware to do a good job, or the game is amazing and a return to form. I even remember using these screenshots right here on a video that I made before launch, noting some things that were worrying me. This is from Trickweeks, the lead writer over on Blue Sky, answering some fan questions and talking about how some features of previous games were going to be unavailable in Veilguard and why. Notably blood magic because, and I quote, "We've shifted it from a power boost to really being the key to a lot of nasty stuff that we aren't interested in having heroes do. I think it can be ethically neutral if you only use your own blood, but after seeing it used as a required part of mind control and demon binding in Dragon Age 2 and Inquisition, it's just not the road that we want a hero to walk right now." These were immediate red flags that Rook, the playable character, and the companion cast were going to be boring preset characters that all fall into one universal moral compass, and that we as players can't even roleplay as a more morally grey character or pick rude, bad, or heartless choices as we could in previous games. Even in Inquisition, which was complained about by so many players, you at least had the option of being a total asshole, leading to some funny scenes and dramatic outcomes.
I had spent time with few of your people before this. From the stories, I thought you all thuggish, simple and crude. Now, after observing you strike down some of the few true elves left for the crime of defending their temple, now I know I was right. You have no idea what a comfort that is.
Not the road we want the hero to walk right now. Give me a goddamn break. Just make a good fun game for fuck's sake. Let your own personal nonsense aside and give people what they expect from Dragon Age. After Anthem, they were supposed to know their strengths and then double down on them in the creation of this new game of Veilguard, but then here they were just diluting them. And I swear they make these decisions themselves. Decisions, guys. This isn't like, oh man, I wanted to implement this feature but EA doesn't let me, or the engine doesn't allow it, or whatever. They said that it's an online game. Like, no, this is just a decision. You make decisions every day. You can make decisions while taking a dump. That's where I write most of my script, and these people made the decision that all of these morally grey elements, or other elements that could be considered morally grey, were not going to be available in the game narratively nor mechanically. But now we're supposed to apologize to them because apparently these bad decisions are irrelevant and this trinity of key people in the development of this game are not responsible for their own work? Anyway, enough articles for now, let's just get back to the main one. So, now I can safely assume that they tried their best with a bad deck of cards. Many others agree, blaming Bush for any of that never seemed to make sense, says Ill Exile. She came in to salvage an already sinking ship. Anyone that was blaming her at any point was uninformed. Yeah, of course, I mean, hey, she was just the director of the damn game, why would she be to blame for anything? What I love most in this world is to hear uninformed people telling other people that they're the ones who are uninformed. The article continues with, as I covered in a previous report on the matter, those close to the project had already credited Bush for getting development back on track. She joined the Veilguard as director back in 2022, and despite many of the creative decisions having already been made then, as well as a disastrous pivot to multiplayer and then back to single player, Bush was blamed and made the subject of abuse over the game's shortcomings. It seems that many are realizing this now, as one of the most upvoted posts in the Dragon Age subreddit is titled Corinne Bush saved Veilguard from a far worse fate and we owe her an apology. From Capt C4004, whatever the fuck his name is. Hold on to your seats, boys, we got some stuff to cover here in regards to these delusional paragraphs, but before we jump in, I will say this. It is true that Corinne Bush only came in late into development, about halfway through if the reports of 4 full years of development are to be believed. I have no idea exactly how much work she did in the game, I have no idea exactly how much is attributed to her. I don't know if, for example, the phenomena that is Tasha's trash character is solely owed to her, or partially, or maybe even none at all. It's just that I don't care one way or the other, because the result of the game is still what it is. And every time that she talks about the game, whether it be before launch, whether it be just after launch, or even when she already knew that she was getting out of the studio, she's always been very positive and proud about it. It's never been a case of, oh, this is not what I wanted, or oh, I came in too late, or anything like that. And in general, I'm also not very confident in Bush's proficiency as a game director in an RPG, because she spent the entirety of the previous decade working on goddamn Sims games.
Before leading the charge on Veilguard, Bush honed her skills working on an even bigger mega hit franchise, The Sims.
It's one thing to go from there to a new, smaller project that steps into the genre, but for a Dragon Age game, a big budget AAA RPG that was a huge sequel to a story that's been building up from previous games, it just didn't sound like a good idea. It's not that well-known directors can't screw up already, they absolutely do, it's just, it is what it is, it's not a track record that inspires much confidence. But the most ridiculous part about all of this is that now the game's media is over here underplaying the director's influence with all of this garbage of, oh, stop blaming the director, she wasn't even there for a significant amount of time, she came in and all those decisions were already made. It is so unfair. But this was never the narrative before. You could already see from the previous articles that we just read, but then back in December we also saw this gem. Corinne Bush is the ruler of RPGs, conqueror of haters. And later in the article we have this line: when it comes to authenticity in games, plenty of directors and developers talk the talk, but Bush is the rare game maker who delivers. From her time with The Sims to Dragon Age, which by the way is a fucking straight line, you know, like from the time with Sims to Dragon Age, as if there's a lot in between. There's nothing in between, it's not even a straight line, it's actually just Sims and then Dragon Age. But anyway, sorry, let's continue. From her time with The Sims to Dragon Age, Bush has always brought a deep sense of humanity to the game.
What? Bro, what are you talking about, man?
Putting characters first and never shying away from nuance or complexity in identity, relationships, and existential crises. Brother, I'm having an existential crisis reading this shit. It's what makes Bush a leader in the industry, and why Bioware tried so hard to carry on the Dragon Age series legacy with Veilguard. But Bush isn't finished yet. She has come a long way in the industry and has wisdom to impart, and more projects to come. So which is it again? Is Bush some sort of poor, unfairly maligned developer that came in at the last minute and bears no responsibility for what happened? The game was already set to be what it was going to be, and she had no hand in how it turned out? Or is she a leader in the industry who did such an incredible job? It's not just one article that paints that picture, by the way, it's a general sentiment. And part of that narrative that blamed gamers for the failure of the game on the previous video that I covered a few fucking weeks ago, the director, the writers, etc. had all done a fantastic job, but the gamers were biased from the get-go and made it fail with hate campaigns. The narrative in this very article is already kind of contradictory on that last line. It seems that many are realizing this now, as one of the most upvoted posts in the Dragon Age subreddit is titled "Corinne Bush saved Veilguard from a far worse fate and we owe her an apology." Like, there's so much to be unpacked here, and it's all bad. If she saved the game from a much worse fate, then not only is she heavily impactful for how the game turned out, and therefore accountable for its failure, but also it indirectly states how terrible John Epler, Trick Weeks, and all of the other writers were, because apparently they were running this entire thing into a ditch before Corinne Bush popped up and saved it. But John Epler, he just said that this was what they were all much more comfortable with. Anthem was a disaster, but then the team was happy, ready, and willing to bring their A game by working on the next Dragon Age as it played to their strengths. Could it be that this is all bullshit? Nah, no way, come on now, come on. Games media websites like The Gamer would never lie to us, and game journals like Jason Schreier would never downplay or straight up hide important details in a deep dive, even if those details were directly ratioing his own cope fest back during Veilguard's launch. And of course, Redditors in the Dragon Age subreddit would never be drowning in copium. Something else must be going on here. The article closes with, "Of course, it should not have got to the point where so many in the community jumped to conclusions." Oh, of course, I mean, imagine that, assuming that bad writing is owed to bad writing and bad directing is owed to bad directing is honestly just bad faith. Okay, it's bad faith. It's bad faith, guys, okay? There's literally nothing that could connect these things, guys, okay? Stop being bad faith. What is this, a fucking Vosh stream? Article person continues, "And there are zero excuses for those who are being bigoted. Not that I'm seeing any of them apologize." Apologize for what? That word literally means jack shit now. It's been so ridiculously overused that it doesn't even matter. All it takes to be a bigot now is to just not like the damn game. Reality is, these fans who are apologizing don't even have anything to apologize for, because they've been shilling for the game since the trailers released. Never forget that people got banned from Facebook groups for laugh reacting to posts of Veilguard, or laughing at that terrible announcement trailer that looked like a Fortnite expansion. People who don't like this game and don't make excuses for it like, "Oh, it was the gamers, oh, it was EA," have nothing to apologize for, and this article does nothing to actually show any validity to these claims. There's so much contradictory shit that just exposes what this is. A bunch of soyjacks still coping about Veilguard 8 months after launch. It's time to let go, man. Article ends with, "We can only hope that everyone involved lands on their feet somewhere else and doesn't get as messed around with as they were at Bioware." And you know what? That's something that we can agree on. So do I. I want these people to land on their feet and make another game, preferably together, so they can't leech off of other people's successful decisions or more talented writing. I want this to happen because maybe then, when that also turns into a meme, people will stop shifting the blame around. EA's interjections affected this game, there's no doubt about that. But what I'd expect to see from that kind of outcome would be, for example, a game with a great story still, one that doesn't neglect Solus, but actually gave him a satisfying send-off and brought all of the story details from previous games together with a payoff that is worth it. But hindered by subpar gameplay, not because the developers made that shift themselves, but because EA forced them to use garbage that they didn't want to use. For example, back in the day, EA kept pushing their studios to use the Frostbite engine, and it was just a bad experience. No user manual, no experts to ask questions to, nothing. That's what I would expect to see from a game that got screwed over by EA. That, and of course also a bunch of bugs and issues in the game itself, stability, etc., like Andromeda had, because in the end they only had 18 months to finish the damn game and EA would not give them any more time. Instead, in Veilguard, concepts that should have had no impact whatsoever, like writing, storytelling, and decisions to keep previous Dragon Age history intact, were totally butchered. And the gameplay was told to be a deliberate choice because, according to some dingleberry, whose name I don't remember right now, actually, wait, I do, Mark Dara, I think, the Bioware veteran who was brought in to consult on the game. According to him, the system in the previous games was dull, and Veilguard was the first Dragon Age where the combat is fun. Also, according to Corinne Bush, the new linear world design was going to be much better and eliminate the hinterlands problem of Inquisition. Do you see what I mean, fellas? fellas. No matter where I look, every damn issue is either something that shouldn't have been impacted by the blunders with EA, or they are straight up decisions that these project leads made themselves. Decisions they believed were the correct ones, decisions they wanted to make, and that they hyped up before launch and even a bit afterwards, before the numbers dropped and the layoffs happened, shattering the narrative and showing everyone that thing which some people were already saying, which is that this game was a flop. Believe me, I want to dunk on EA as much as the next guy. If it was up to them, the game would be even worse. I'm pretty sure about that, because as soon as the game was revealed as a failure by EA themselves, Andrew Wilson comes out of the woodwork saying, oh, it's because it wasn't a live service. I mean, Jesus Christ, can you imagine Veilguard, as bad as it is right now, but as a live service as well? The writing and decisions made, but converted into a live service? Oh my god, what a monstrous thing. I wouldn't even have been able to finish it in order to criticize it. I'm straight up allergic to live services like this. But regardless of that, and regardless of my desire to want to dunk on EA, this is just not it, man. People have to be accountable for their mistakes, and this is removing all accountability from people who made big mistakes and just pretending like it's EA that made them, or pretending like they weren't even mistakes, which is even worse. This is max capacity delusion unlike any I've ever seen before. And I don't think it's even over yet. I think that as the year goes by, and maybe even into next year and a few years after that, there's still going to be people coping about this game, hoping that people just forget about all of this so that they can rewrite history. It just is what it is, I guess. But with that, I'm shutting this video down. Thank you all very much for watching, and for the recent subscribers, like the video if you enjoyed my take on this, let me know yours in the comments, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Subscribe if you don't want to miss out on any future sauce, and take care of yourselves.